Nice. Okay, I'm Bob, and I'm going to tell you about elk training. So here's our target. She is my girlfriend's daughter. She is 7 years old. She likes rainbows, sparkles, mermaids, Disney, all of the typical things that you would expect a 7-year-old girl to like. And every year she gets a scavenger hunt. And usually it's the kind where there's like a piece of paper and it tells you a clue, and then you have to go to where the clue tells you to, and there's another clue, and blah, 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 until you get to the end. Last year, I wasn't here for this, but she apparently did this thing in like 3 or 4 minutes. And so she's really good at it. And she also really wants to see Santa. She's been plotting like how she's going to see Santa for years now, and she has a plan every year, and she falls asleep. Um, but the other thing is she really wants to see an elf. Her friends have elves, and the elf on the shelf thing, and she really wants one of her own. But we do not. So we tried to explain to her that elves cannot be owned, that they are people, and you cannot have an elf as a slave. That's slavery. That's not okay. And that's just she can't get her head around it. And then we also tried to explain to her that Santa cannot be seen. And like we're still working on that, but it's something that I wanted to try to accomplish with this experience. And then my girlfriend Laura thinks that this is probably the last year that she will believe in Santa. And so we wanted to give her, like, we wanted to have an experience where everyone could enjoy her belief in Santa. And since the mom has been doing the scavenger hunt every year, I figured, what if I put it on and she doesn't know anything about it? And that way they can both experience it together. So the plan was like Santa knows everything. He's had hundreds of years of dealing with inquisitive kids. And I don't know if you've ever seen Arthur Christmas. It's an animated movie uh, about Santa and elves and all that. But they go into all these cool technologies that they use and magic to make sure that kids don't see Santa or the elves. And so they've got like these like night vision cameras and just all kinds of fun stuff. But anyway, I wanted to do something similar and show off some technology that Santa and the elves use to avoid these inquisitive kids so that she wouldn't keep plotting ways to like make it harder for us to put presents out at night. And so I wanted to make some kind of a training course that would show off some of this tech and assist, like use a small tablet to assist with this. And do the series of challenges and puzzles. And there were also 2 grandparents, so I wanted to include them. So there were 5 of us total, and I wanted the experience to involve everyone. Putting the plan in motion took weeks. It took a long time to prepare for this thing. And the night the night before, she stayed up until 1:15 a.m., which meant I couldn't get all of my stuff in place until after that. So I was up until 3:30. And then, of course, she woke up super early at 6:30. And fortunately, she didn't actually like get us up until around 7. But then, so the first thing that she found was this piece of paper that said, "Here's what's going on." And we immediately had a challenge because she refused to turn on the light and she couldn't read the stupid thing. Um, it- we got hung up at the very beginning for the stupidest reason. And then she was like, she found this stuffy of an elf that I had put into this tree. And she wasn't supposed to find it yet. And she was insistent that it was an actual elf and that she couldn't touch the elf. And so she had to tell us the story about sprinkling it with cinnamon. And then she went downstairs and got some tweezers, like some tongs, so that she wouldn't be able to touch the elf because then it loses its magic. It was just crazy. And I actually had addressed this in the future when she is supposed to get the stuffy, but it was out of order. Anyway, half an hour after we got her started on this, we actually got her downstairs and in front of the tablet. So this is the tablet. It is just an Android tablet. And I built an app in just JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and a small bit of PHP. But then I used something called Fully Kiosk Browser, which allows you to view this thing like as a kiosk in kiosk mode, so that you couldn't escape it, basically. But the other advantage was that it has some JavaScript APIs that allow me access to do some Bluetooth stuff, some camera stuff, some accelerometer stuff, so that I could do some additional challenges with the tablet. So the tablet is there, and it's basically like, hi, here's a tablet. You're going to use this to assist you, much like the Santa and the elves use a tablet to assist them. And there was a cryptex next to it that I had 3D printed. Oh, and you can see the elves and Santa ate cookies and all that. Yeah, she actually left out a shot glass of maple syrup for the elf. So when she's ready to go, she clicks the first button and we get started. And the first challenge was that she had to do 25 elf jumps, which is sort of like a jumping jack. And that's where I introduced next component. So there was the camera watching her do these elf jumps. There was me, and I had this thing that I had made that I'm calling the admin token. And basically, it's just a button that provides power to a Bluetooth beacon. And when the beacon starts advertising, then all it does is it advertises its unique ID and an incrementing number. So that when the tablet is listening for those beacons and it sees a new number, then it knows that I've pressed my admin token. And so I can count, depending on what state we're in the app, then it can do whatever I need to. So in this case, it was count down from 25 to 0. So we all did our star jumps and our elf jumps, and it counted down, and she was none the wiser that Santa wasn't watching from above. And that once she succeeded with those 25 elf jumps, it moved on to the next screen, which said, okay, you're warmed up. Now let's go on to the real challenges. And Santa has the ability to stop time. What else is stop time? It was an analog clock, which we're trying to get her to read analog clocks. So I've been incorporating things that we're trying to teach her into these puzzles. But anyway, once she found the clock that was stopped at 12:45, that was the solution to the cryptex, which then brought her to this piece of paper, which had a bunch of math story problems. More things that we're trying to get her to work on. This was another lesson learned, and something that I hadn't considered is maybe don't give a bunch of word problems to a kid who's only slept a few hours. So on Christmas morning, yeah. So there was some crying, but we got back on track. And she did not decide to quit the elf training. And so we did the math and got going. And then we moved on to the next stage where, so this says, Santa relies on the help of elves to get everything done. You will need some help on your training mission, so we have given you a stuffy. See, I said it was a stuffy, not an actual elf. This is important. This was the exposition that needed to happen before she got the stuffy, not after. Anyway, so then I was like, you might need the help of other people in the house too. And that was setting her up to understand that some of these challenges might require more than just her. So that brings in the next piece of tech that I did, which is the snowflakes. So inside each of our stockings, I put a custom designed and built thing that I'm calling the snowflake. And it's basically a Bluetooth module that has an RGB LED attached to it, and a battery and a rolling ball sensor. That's it. Those are the only 4 components. And inside, yeah, that's all that's inside. And so when you tilt it on its side, it basically turns off. And then when you tip it up, and you can tell up because it's supposed to be like an ornament. So I put a little circle here so you could put an ornament on it or a hook on it. But basically, it just cycles between red, green, and blue. And so the idea, oh, and I made 5 different ones, which was super easy because I just used the circular pattern and mirroring. And so I only had to adjust one thing, the length of each of those 3 arms. And that way I could adjust the length, save it as a STL, adjust the length, save it as an STL, adjust the length, and do that for all 5 of them. And so it was pretty easy to build. And then I used my Bambu P1S printer, and those things are amazing, and it worked every time. So yeah, so the first problem that she had to do was match the pattern. So the 5 along the top are each of the 5 snowflakes and their current status. And then the big one is what she's supposed to match. So after they figured out what was actually happening, then I got more and more complicated. So I had 2 of the snowflakes, and they had to get both of them to match. And then I had 5, like 3, 4, 5. So all 5 people were involved in getting this thing to work, which was fun. And then afterwards, I was like, "You did great. Bring it all together for a selfie." And I used the camera on the tablet to I used the camera on the tablet to take a selfie, and then had it email that to my girlfriend, so that we would always have that image. And then I was like, well, I've also got the RSSI on these things, so I know the signal strength. I can add another challenge just for free. So I have. So the last challenge that involved the snowflake, well, the next challenge that involved the snowflakes was to tell everybody that Santa and his elves work together, but remotely. And so everybody needs to go to as far away as they can. And I was planning to use the RSSI, and as soon as the RSSI of everybody was greater than a certain number, then I would move on. But I didn't realize that Amelie would stay with the tablet. And so there was one person who, unfortunately, their RSSI wasn't changing. Fortunately, I had my admin token, which I had made sure would, in each of the states, allow me to move on so that it didn't actually require everyone's perfect performance in order to keep going. So I had this like escape hatch with my admin token. And that was essential. I wonder if in actual escape rooms, a lot of the times they don't have the thing manually turn on this other thing. If maybe just whoever is watching, just like, oh, they're close enough, I'll push the button and move them along. Anyway, right. So then it was elves aren't the only ones that help. There's some animals, and they got lots of treats. And so this brought her to the refrigerator. And inside the refrigerator was this box. And so this box, also 3D printed, was locked. And the lock is essentially these catches, just like that. But there are 5 of them, and there are 5 holes. And I don't know if you got to see the snowflake, but on the back of each snowflake, there is this nub. And so if the idea was you push the nub, all 5 people push the nub into the holes, and it releases the top. And so there was a bag of coffee inside. And the idea was that we would all open up the coffee and the adults would get some coffee. What actually happened was Amelie saw the box and moved on. She did not pay any attention to it. And it wasn't critical for continuing along the path. And so it just stayed next to the fireplace for, I thought it would only be like 5 to 10 minutes. It turned out being more like 45. And so there were some grumpy adults who were like, "I want coffee." And I'm like, "It's coming." So anyway, playtesting is important, but when it's like this kind of a thing, you can't playtest it. It's anyway, the next tech challenge that I had was I used the accelerometer on the tablet and told her that she needed that Santa has lots, or Santa and the elves have balance and they can move around without disturbing anything. How good is your balance? Go from this one place upstairs to the bathroom where your next clue is, and keep the marble on the table or the ornament or whatever. And so she had to hold the tablet flat and go up. The tablet didn't actually know if she was upstairs or next to the bathroom. That's where the admin token came in. So, and again, it didn't actually rely on her having good skills because she biffed it a couple times and I didn't want her to have to go downstairs and back up and like get it perfect. That's why I had this admin token. But she eventually made it up there. And that gave her a present which had earrings in it. So I did make sure to include presents along the way so that she didn't get frustrated or bored and she was like continuously engaged. And then here we had another word puzzle. So it was a bunch of presents, but the sentences were missing letters. So I was trying to get her to read, and we're trying to get her better at spelling too. So identifying which letters I'm missing would help. And so this says big ball, tall tree, which led to a very small ornamental, like it's a tiny tree about this tall, but I had a giant ornament on it. And inside of the ornament was a piece of paper that said so many presents. You'd think this was the date of someone else's birthday, which was a clue for a later puzzle. But now I'm stuck down this path and we don't have a new clue or a new object. And so I needed to transition her back to the tablet. So I used the admin token and moved her on to the next clue, which was, why does the alphabet only have 25 letters during Christmas? Your next clue is in a strange present addressed to the answer, which is no L. So she found the present, and inside of that was a ring of keys with no lock, and another puzzle, so that's Jasmine, Owl, Unicorn, Rainbow, Narwhal, Aurora, and Llama, which spells out journal. She got all of these very quickly. I did not, but Disney. And a 7-year-old girl who likes rainbows and unicorns. So anyway, she goes and finds her journal, which has a new journal inside, one that is sparkly and locks. And guess what the code is? It's her birthday. So the previous clue, which was if you think it was someone else's birthday, goes there. And inside of that is another clue, which leads to the ottoman. And inside of the ottoman is a headband and also a thermal camera. So she wasn't super excited about the thermal camera, but that's to be expected. But I should mention here that I've been seeding a lot of hints for the past few weeks to everyone involved. So I had shown, like, we had breakfast at the couch once, and I showed her that you could lift up the ottoman and use it as like an elevated table. So she knew that you could open it up and there was space inside. And I had shown Laura the thermal camera a few weeks earlier when we were doing some like checking the house for air leaks and stuff. So she knew how to use the thermal camera. So I've been seeding some of these concepts for how to solve the problems for a long time. So anyway, the thermal camera's purpose, and I feel like this was magic. I was super excited about this. So on the tablet, it showed a bunch of icons. And the idea was that they would take the thermal camera and shine it around and discover that hidden inside of that big post, the photo on top of the mantle are the 4 images that you see that match the icons. And so they would see that and then enter that into the tablet. We were actually running kind of long at this point, and so I kind of hinted to Laura the direction to point the thing, and they found it pretty quick. But this is what was behind it. So originally the idea was I was going to use IR LEDs to create the light that the thermal camera would see. But it turned out that the frequency that thermal cameras use for IR is very different from the IR LEDs that you can get. So that didn't work. So then I was like, well, how do I provide actual heat? So I got some nichrome wire and I just did the zigzag of the nichrome wire, and that did not work at all. And it consumed a lot of power, and I was kind of worried about it. So then I took the laser cut acrylic shapes, and I just wrapped the nichrome wire around the edge of it and just taped it on, and plugged it into a 5-volt power supply, like a battery pack, and it worked. Like I didn't need any current limiting resistors or circuitry. It just did its thing, and that was cool. So that's how it actually worked. And it only had to change by a couple degrees. So I didn't have to worry about it like burning the canvas or doing anything weird. But the reason that I had Amelie going upstairs to the bathroom was so that I had a chance to be alone downstairs to plug it in, because I didn't want to let this thing run overnight. So I had to plug it in the morning, and that I needed to build in an opportunity for that to happen. Okay, so then we get to the next clue, which goes to a playset, which has a lock, and it's unlocked with a bunch of keys. And that leads you to another key, which then unlocks the, I 3D printed a round thing that goes around the door handle, so that it's like a child lock thing. But usually those things have holes so you can grab the thing. Well, I just covered the whole thing, so you cannot spin the handle unless it's unlocked. So they opened that and went downstairs. And this is where we had, so I was like, okay, you've demonstrated balance and fitness and patience and teamwork. Now use all of these skills to navigate the laser challenge. Do not touch the laser wires. And this was the end of needing the tablet too. So the laser wires were just yarn, and I'd taken little bells and attached them with little bits of wire. So every piece of yarn has a bell, and if you hit that yarn, it will ring the bell. It worked really well. So I had the yarn going all over.
Set this up at night without ringing the bells.
Fortunately, it was in the basement, and her bedroom is on the second floor, so I didn't have to worry about that. But it took an hour to do all of this. This is only the half of it, actually. The other half's on the right side. But above the mantle, you can see a present. And once she got to the present, it was a locking pencil case. And of course, the key wasn't there. The key was in the bathroom. So in the bathroom, I had 3D printed a small house. And then there's a tube that's supposed to look like a chimney. And then at the top looks like the top of the chimney. And the instructions are, help Santa up the chimney, do not move the house or chimney. And so Laura eventually figured out that this was in the bathroom for a reason. And so she took the cup, filled it with water, poured the water in, and the Santa, which was 3D printed and therefore had like almost no infill, floated. And then there was a string attached to his leg, and you pull the string and up comes the key. So now we've got the pencil case unlocked, and inside, so all of the clues to this point, I hadn't mentioned this before, but they all had a small puzzle piece attached to it. So the Santa, or the chimney, had the last puzzle piece in it. And so we assembled all of the puzzle pieces, and she quickly put it together, and really quickly, like surprisingly, she saw what the clue was in this. And it's, if you look at the vowels, they are actually numbers. So 4014 was the key, or the code, to get into her big finale present, which was this pink trunk that had a holiday Barbie inside and some containers for putting her Barbie clothes and doll stuff. So we all got certificates of completion. And there is some good news. She still believes in Santa, so that's a relief. I didn't like break the fourth wall or make any huge mistakes that then she is suspecting anyone. So, and because we were all participating, she's like, well, everyone participated, so nobody must have been responsible for it. She was disappointed that she didn't get an actual elf, but she was kind of placated with the stuffy. She is still contemplating plans for next year and how she's going to catch Santa, which we really need her to get to sleep. Like her trying to catch Santa is really hard on me trying to get some sleep. But the best part for me anyway is that whenever people ask her about her Christmas, she tells them about this big elaborate escape room treasure hunt elf training, and so that feels good.
Nice.
And that's it. Right. Sorry that took so long.
Was there a learning goal with the snowflake? With other kind of modules along the way, you talked about them addressing some learning goal that you had for her. Otherwise, was the snowflake?
No, there wasn't. That was purely a let's get people to work together.
Got it.
Yes.
She's not suspicious how much 3D printing Santa does. I mean,
Oh, right. So she did not pick up on that. There's a part of the basement that the females call the scary basement, which is where like the utilities and the 3D printer are. And so she doesn't go in there. She didn't see the black, clear, red, and green rolls in the AMS. Like, she has no idea. And that would be an easy one to like explain away just by saying Santa's got 3D printers.
Right.
Yeah.
I missed the first couple minutes, but how are you connecting your Bluetooth to the tablet with your?
So the app that I used called Fully Kiosk Browser has some JavaScript libraries built into it that take advantage of some of the parts of the hardware, like being able to see the iBeacon, the accelerometer, use the camera, the barcode scanner, just some things that are useful for a kiosk that I got access to.
And that was the app on the tablet itself?
Yes, but I built the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, like the actual interface.
I didn't realize this level of parenting was even possible.
And do you think you're gonna do this again next year?
No, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
once in a lifetime thing.
Right. And it took her an hour and a half. Yeah.
How is it school? And very good, so.
Well, yeah, it took a long time to put together. But an hour and a half was probably the upper limit of what she could do as far as like attention and patience, considering that she only had so much sleep. She hadn't had breakfast yet. And it was Christmas morning.
Yeah.
Next year, you're gonna get backup coffee because I'll be in the box. So.
Right. Yeah.
John, do you have a last question?
Good.
All right, thank you, Bob. Bob's got. Wait a second, you should have.
Yeah, I brought that on camera.
Right, this better be heartwarming.
Boy, this is gonna be not nearly as heartwarming, although maybe for some people, we'll see. So this is basically a restoration project for I guess what's called the combination switch on one of my cars. This is the finished product. I'm gonna pass it around. And basically this is what I did. The before is on the top and then the after is on the bottom. Basically, there are all these labels on the switch. This is for the turn signal, the headlights, taillights, and the wiper and the washer fluid. And all the markings that showed what the functions were like worn off or degraded from the sun or something. They basically weren't visible. They'd been worn away. So I put them back. And I'm gonna describe how I did that. The first,
Eric, you should work.
yeah, okay, there. The first step was to recreate the graphics that are missing. And I did this in Inkscape as vector graphics. I had some reference pictures, and I actually had a separate combination switch part, which was not quite the right fit for my car, but it did have all these same icons. So I actually had a physical model to go off of. But I recreated those graphics. One interesting thing here maybe is that the off text I just made out of like graphical shapes like ellipses and lines and stuff. And then I figured I didn't want to go through that mess for these. So I found a font that was pretty close to what it was supposed to be, and that's actual text in the graphic. So with that file in hand, I sent that off to a place that does custom rub-on transfers. And what they do with that is, I believe they got like a plastic sheet as a substrate, and then they print onto that a layer or two of ink in this pattern that you send to them. And then on top of that, they put a pressure activated adhesive, again, in the same mask. So I believe just the areas that you have set out in the image. And so that allows you to then put the sheet onto some surface with the plastic substrate up, and then basically apply pressure, and that activates the adhesive, and then the ink transfers. It sticks to the surface now instead of sticking to the substrate. Then you pull the plastic sheet off, and ideally the design stays on the surface. So this is a little picture of that process. It's important to fix the little sheet with the design in one place while you're rubbing something across it to activate the adhesive. That didn't work perfectly on one of the icons on there. I think it's the washer fluid on the end of the wiper stalk. And so there's a little bit of misalignment in some of the parts of the graphics, but overall I was very happy with how it went. And so I used the masking tape to just keep my little pieces of transfer in place while I'm rubbing them. And then you just get like a blunt, hard object and scrape at it a little bit, and it transfers. And then one last thing, the design will definitely stick to the surface, but it's probably not as durable, I think, as however they did it initially in the factory. So you can put clear coat over it to give it a little more protection. So I did that, and I just masked off most of the combination switched and then sprayed a couple of coats in clear coat. And that's it. I think it'll go back to, oh, it's not going to, but yeah, that's all the pictures. Were there comments in chat?
Oh, that's fine.
Okay.
I got that part.
Cool. So yeah, that's it. Any questions, comments?
You had the plastic transfer sheet be put on pressure to just peel plastic wall.
Yes. Yep.
I know we're not supposed to talk about price and these types of things, but I'm just curious for what does this cost to get the rub-on transfer thing?
Yeah. I think it was over $100. It was not much over $100. The unfortunate thing is that I put this off for like a year or more maybe, and the company I was looking at to get it printed got acquired or something. They like redid their business model. Their minimum size went from like note card to 8.5 by 11, so the price jumped way up because I didn't get it done as soon as I could. So I've got an 8.5 by 11 sheet, and I said, well, what am I going to do with this? I duplicated the design a bunch of times in case I could find some other use for it, but I've got a bunch of extra stuff. I can still get this part from Japan, but to get it shipped, I think it ended up being more. So you could argue that it's still financially makes sense. Yes, Bob.
Do you have to account for any geometry distortion because it's on a curved surface?
Apparently not. No, I think no, and because the substrate can bend, so the design will basically just bend with the surface, which I guess is what you want. But yeah, I didn't really think about that. I think you don't need to. Interesting question.
Kate was observing you went with the rustic basil. She thought maybe, you know, you gotta go with the pepper stuff next time.
Yeah, actually, I prefer the creamy Genovese. But I was trying on the rustic. It's fine. I mean,
For spray masking, it's fine.
yes, yeah, that you know, you didn't need anything too specific for
Jacob's
that.
also sponsored by Emilio's. You guys didn't.
Yeah, maybe oh, that's there we go. Okay, sponsorship complete.
Any other questions?
Does the manufacturer of these rub-on things, do they make them for different surfaces? Like, is that even an option?
Not that I'm aware of. And I'm not sure I even remember seeing if they had a list of what surfaces they expected it to work with. Yeah, so I'm not sure, but I think it's, you know, they've got different options for like colors and they do like metallic, they give metallic options, but I think there's really only one type of like adhesive.
Did you find more than one supplier?
I think I tried to, and I was not able to easily, at least. I found a bunch of like, you know, cheaper options that were like vinyl sticker things, but I didn't think I wanted to do that. So I imagine there's one out there, but
I feel like you should have done like some flap to turn on the light, you know, transfer those randomly. flap to activate, just put it on all sorts of
around here.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's what I should have put on the rest of the 8.5 by 11.
Yeah.
Instead of just the same thing.
Now you can put mist low, high, and off anywhere you want.
on anything. Yeah. So if you want to do something like this, if your combination switch has this problem, let me know because you'll get a free transfer design.
Should put these on eBay, so you should
Well,
sell the rest of them quicker.
Yeah, I'm thinking of whether I
It's a shot.
can get them out and find someone who wants them. That may be possible.
Did you clear coat over this, you said?
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
Jim's been over there trying to dig it off with his fingernail, so don't me.
Great. I got backup. So
I know he doesn't hold up the finger, did you?
thanks, Jim.
Alright, thanks. Dave.
Yep.
Look at that. I think Jacob's doing a test drive, stealing the car after the meeting, if anybody's interested.
Hi. I have come in, so for anybody that isn't familiar, we tend to process a bunch of trash into scrap metal and money. And I've been kind of running the program, helping Chris run the program, whatever you want to call it.
Program, it's on you now, buddy.
Okay, yeah, I claimed it, so I guess I have to keep it, huh? So let me get my high-tech presentation going real quick. So anyway, we had a pretty good time the other day sending off some stuff, but I'm going to use this opportunity to kind of let you guys know what the process looks like and kind of how we deal with it here. So ultimately, we get a bunch of trash from a bunch of different places, from like large donations. So like one of my favorites to tell people was when some professor from UW retired, they had their whole office and they like scraped it into a couple Gaylords and gave it to Chris. And Chris like used something like 4 of the things, sold 3 of the things, and then we kind of scrapped a bunch of it. And so Industry Partners is another one. I know there's a handful of companies in town that just dump their trash into Chris's coffers and then we kind of tear through it. Building tear outs, like when the city is going to tear something down, they'll give us access to church that we pulled some stuff out of, things like that. Other than that, it's just kind of like project scrap, bits of metal that people have. And this is all centered around metal, just for the record. And then
Please, no clothing donations.
yeah, right. And then just kind of user trash. And so this is just, I've got kind of a lot of slideshows and then some data towards the end. And this is just to give you an idea of kind of what this process looks like. So this came out of the church in question. We pulled, just kind of any available wire. It's all copper. This is just kind of, this is the corner over here where the big metal pipes are now, was the kind of scrap corner for a long time. And this is actually indicative of a handful of things. And so you see these cardboard boxes, that was, we'll get to that, but that was a donation that somebody had a bunch of extra of the same thing. They just kind of somehow got a hold of Chris and sent it over. And then there's just kind of nonsense that people bring and parts of things that we take apart. And it piles up until I badger you all to come and help us take it all apart. And so this is more stuff like that. Ryobi saw, for example, that's mine, right? It sucked. I replaced it. It was not safe, so we scrapped it. And that's kind of where all this stuff comes from. Just to give you an idea, that jumper cable thing in the yellow box, I pulled it out of a dumpster, didn't work, so I brought it here to recycle. And then also, like, this is a bunch of wire that somebody saw and sent us on a wild goose chase, and I think Chris ran out and grabbed it. This is kind of industry stuff, just to give you an idea of kind of the things that we're after. And so those pile of cardboard boxes, these are erase metals. So they bought, I don't know, a buttload of these race metals, and then COVID happened, so they didn't have the race, and so they had all these extra metals. And so I actually took them home and like pulled there's like a ring, a steel ring, a ribbon, and then this metal medallion thing. And so we tore it all down, because one of the big things is when you scrap, you want it down to base metal so that you can get the most money for it. Because if we would have scrapped this, it would have been like breakage, and the cost that we get is substantially lower as opposed to like the box of purified, medallions. So once we get all this stuff, we pile it in a corner until Chris can't stand it anymore, and then he makes me organize a volunteer night, and we do that quarterly. What's 6 to 9 months? 6 to 9 months, something like that. And so then this is kind of what we do. So we get together, we take the stuff apart. I yell at everybody about not putting stuff in the buckets, and we'll get to why. And so a big thing is a lot of people go, oh, it's copper. Copper goes in this bucket. Oh, it's aluminum. There's 40 different types of aluminum. There's like 50 different types of copper. And I kind of break it down at the end to show you some of the differences. But each one of these categories pays out at a different rate. And so the cleaner that category is, then the better, like the more money we're going to make at the end. And so this is just kind of some highlights of just some of the we call it scrapping yet, right? We also trash talk whoever we feel like, especially Chris if he's not around. And this is kind of the mayhem. So the mayhem ensues, right? Everybody's everywhere. There's tables and stuff everywhere. And ultimately, if you ever come to one of these or ever curious, you just grab whatever you want, take it apart. And then when you're bored, you work onto something else. And then some people every now and again find treasures to keep with them. My daughter is one of those. This is a good example of something that I took apart. This was some 3-phase fuse. And so I just took this home to play with, and you can kind of see, I'm going to get a little closer here. So you can see I actually had a bandsaw cut the fiberglass tube off of the brass ends. And then this is a steel cap way up there with a bunch of copper inside of it. And so there's a bit of finesse to get a lot of the stuff broken down, but this is also just kind of what I do for a hobby. So it works out well. Another circuit breaker box, and this is just to kind of show you in this picture, there's a steel enclosure, there's brass bars, or copper bars, and then at the end you've got tin copper with sometimes a steel, but most of the time some sort of copper screw in it. And so all of these things just fall into different categories. And then so once we break it down, then that's when we start sorting it. This is just like an aluminum back panel off of something. Chris sent me this picture, so I put it in here. Some kind of an idea of what various of these buckets look like. This is another from like an industry partner. This was a bunch of cables, right? And I just cut the ends off and then stripped them down into the various different parts and pieces. But this is right here. Where the purpose of this is why Chris and I are kindred spirits, because well before I even knew the sector existed, well before I moved to Madison, I had been collecting processors out of old computers, and I really didn't know what I was going to do with them. I just kind of like would process through scrap and mess with stuff, and I would hoard them off on the side and had like a partial shoebox full. And then I came here, and we mixed our shoeboxes. His was a lot bigger than mine. And then somebody died, passed away, and had a really, really weird amount of computer bits, including like a bunch of RAM, some still packages and all this. And so this is like, I took it home to kind of process it. That's why that's my, home shop.
I
And-
sent home 10 pounds and like 2 pounds. So he insists, there's no chance. But
And so the basic theme of this is just try to eke as much money out as we can. We can all get part-time jobs at McDonald's and make way more money than this, but it's a lot funner to do it this way. And so in this picture, you can see I've broken down into different types of processors, different types of RAM based on like gold content or other metal content, because that's what the scrap yard is going to be looking at. And this is 2 5-gallon buckets slap full of RAM, which doesn't seem like a lot, but at the time we were thinking that RAM paid out at like $10 a pound. So we're thinking like, well, this person has some real cash. And so we hoarded it up and we actually, I don't know, Chris watches the gold market. I don't know what he does. Maybe Joe Rogan gives gold price updates. I have no idea. So then this is just like some, more processor pictures to give you an idea, because gold is king, right? Gold, from gold, and then it goes down to copper, and then it goes down into aluminum, and then kind of everything else. Brass is a funny bastard child in the middle because it's got a lot of copper in it. This is a fun piece of material that we had no idea, like, I don't know, it's got some gold on those, like, they use a gold plating for signal processing, right? So this had some gold plating. We kind of kept it around. Weren't sure what to do with it. Scrapyard really didn't want it. This is old oscilloscope boards that are gold plated. And so we've been hoarding these up for years, not really sure what to do with them. And then this is kind of funny. This is like a weird little, I don't know, like a bag of just DIN chips, right? Just 2 little IC chips. And then, so ultimately, once we gather all this up, then we turn it in somewhere. And this is just like buckets of wire that we had collected from somewhere. And so once we scrap it, we make small stacks of cash. And watching the tweakers is one of my favorite parts of going to the scrapyard. Anecdotal story is one of my favorite times there. And so like people have all kinds of missions in life and they have all kinds of struggles. And I was in line behind a guy who had a kitchen sink or a bathroom sink with a faucet and a piece of log chain. And that was his like pour. And so he turned it in, he got like $1.50 in a check, and then he left. And that was his day's work or whatever. And we're here, and you can see, like this is just aluminum shavings from one of our partners. This is like steel radiator covers that, come out of that church that we took apart. But this is ultimately what this looks like here, where we just kind of have all these buckets and then we just kind of load it up and take it in. This right here is like a pretty good example of kind of a weak haul for, like a little bucket with this much stuff isn't really worth much. We want to gather kind of the weight and aggregate it up together. This is a good load, right? This is wire that came from somewhere, slap full in the van, took it in. This is 140 pounds, right?
100 pounds.
100 pounds.
100 pounds.
100 pounds of
That's
gold
great.
that we sent to, I don't remember the company.
BoardSort.
BoardSort. And this was like, send it into the ether and hope it comes back. Because this is all the gold that we've been hoarding for over a decade. I don't know. Like I first pulled my first processor off and put it in my shoebox 25 years ago or something like that. So I made Chris get insurance on it and it didn't get lost. That big weird panel that I showed you, he used in the box as structure because we weren't really sure what to do with it. This is a quick aside. I'll get back to that in a second. But anyway, so we set this off. So the next video, there's 2 videos, and this was just a fun thing that I found. So this is an aluminum chassis with stainless steel screws, and they galvanically corroded together for however long. And so when I was taking them apart, I was having to force them apart. And at one point, the spark bounced off my finger, and I was like, wait a second. And so I took a couple of videos just to kind of highlight. Like, I don't know, I just thought that was really cool. And that it did that almost every screw I took apart. You can see the spark if you watch it like bounce off. And this is just like cell phone slow-mo video there. All this.
Did it spark when the screw popped loose?
Exactly.
Ah.
And so I actually had those T-slot or the T-handle Allen wrenches, and I would twist it almost all the way around before it break. And we had like 20 of those chassis. And so anyway, I had plenty of times to mess up the film before I got it. This is to give you, so this gets into our pricing. Just in case anybody's ever curious how much things are worth, but you can see that within copper, there's a dozen categories, right? So number 1 copper is your clean, regular copper. Like if you bought a piece of copper pipe from the store, that's it. Number 2 copper is dirty copper. So once you sweat those 2 copper pipes together, that flux and the solder and the copper, that's all number 2 because it's degraded. And then we get into insulated, the low grade, electric motor. So I've kind of highlighted not the biggest payout, but the ones that we feel the most, like the most common categories. And that's in the kind of yellowy greeny color. So the old sheet and old cast over here is just aluminum, right? You can see aluminum's got a gajillion different options. Even like radiator. If you look at auto, I also think the scrapyard just makes stuff up sometimes when we go in. Some of the pricing, if you look at the high-low stuff, the orange highlights are the highlights for the high value compared to the low value compared to the current value. Most of them are erroneous, like the 6063 extrusion. We got 220 a pound one time. We had a particularly big load. It was an $1,100 check, and we ran as fast as we could to the bank. I don't know what happened. They bonered something up. We just took off. The yellow brass way over there, you can see that's a legit, like that's just a fluctuation of the market. Some of this stuff fluctuates wildly. Some of it stays pretty stagnant. Like the old sheet and the old cast, they stay pretty well. I mean, you can, if you watch it over time, which I do because I'm a crazy person, you can see it kind of just peter along, where other things will change somewhat wildly.
So is number one copper is worth less than number 2 copper right now? Is that what I'm reading?
His chart's a little funky. Cyberbrick should be the highest. It's actually over $5 right now. It's the highest I've ever seen it.
Really good point to make is this is my known latest price. And I almost added a date value to this. So apologies for the confusing messages here. Bearbright, that 374 was from like 2.5 years ago. The current like number 1 copper was from last week, and then the number 2 copper was from, you know, some number of years ago.
These are what we've turned in, not the market price.
Right.
So this is the latest prices that we've been paid out, which could be anywhere in the last 5 years.
And then in one of these slides, so this will give you, yeah, you're right. And this will give you an idea. So like you can, this is just my kind of data here, but like number 1 copper from 10/9/24, but then the number 2 was from, you know, 5 months before that. So not excellent data to show, but whatever, there it is. And then this is our to-date values, and I know I'm missing some of the data, but we've turned in about 55,000 pounds of scrap. I estimate, total wild guess, that at least half of that, or in anything we take apart, half of it goes in the trash, half of it goes to the scrapyard. Oftentimes, for a long time, we didn't even pay attention to steel because steel wasn't worth our time. We would just throw it outside, and then we had a guy that would come by and pick it up. The average kind of price over the whole thing was, you know, about 50 cents a pound. We made somewhere around $27,000. I know I'm missing some receipts because in this I included some of the Resource Solution computer stuff, and I don't have all those receipts. But these are the kind of the high level, the big hauls that we've had. So the 96 pounds, that's 100 pounds of gold scrap, easily the highest payout at $3,600. So that was pretty awesome. The radiators from the church, I showed you the picture of the steel. I didn't have a picture of the actual radiators. But just one day's worth of, well, many days worth of work. One haul was $1,200. The race metals, those are zinc die cast. We were really hoping they were stainless. They weren't. They had to pull. There's a little laser gun they pull out. But that's $163. You know, which again, I could have went and got a job at McDonald's and made more money with all my time, but you know, whatever. And then the Bearbright was some big. Bearbright is copper wire, like big money copper wire that we stripped the insulation off, and that was from a while ago. The reason for line item number 5 or whatever here is if you look at the totals, you'll notice that for some random reason we go to the scrapyard every 8/4. So somewhere around end of July, we're gonna do another scrapping yard just to keep this trend going. I have no idea why. This is just like something I noticed when I was doing the. I don't know if it's somebody's birthday. Is there something going on?
It's Christmas.
Yeah, maybe. And this is another. So here's you can see the 220 highlight over here. But over here to give you an idea, old sheet and old cast. I would naively think that like the purity of the metal is going to be a linear kind of relationship with value. But if you can look down those and they swap for highest value there for a period of time. And this really just feeds into the scrapyard just makes stuff up as they go along theory. So anyway, that's just a fun curiosity that I found. If anybody is curious this was the $3,600 poll that we had. And so so a few points of interest is the 386, 486 gold cap boards or processors for $350. So if anybody finds an old computer, we're very interested in that processor. And if you can find maybe 70 or 80 of these old computers, I'm very interested. Another one in there was the let me see, I'll use the mouse here. This here, the 0.6 ounces of IC chips, that's those just little Ziploc bag, as far as I can tell, of those little IC chips. And it pays out a really high price, $13.50 a pound, but because we only had wisps of it, we got 51 cents out of the deal. Which is just kind of fascinating to me that somebody on that end like measured it and put like, oh, okay, 51 cents. Like they lost money in that transaction. But right here, the 70 pounds of gold fingered RAM is really where it's at. That's a big chunk of that price.
So are you looking at copper, for example?
Yeah.
You know, there's various types of copper. Are you able to tell the different types by sight, or is there a chemical test, or how do you know what?
Generally speaking, copper is copper in this regard. So aluminum has some of that kind of point that you're making.
There's 3 adulterated coppers, one of which we found one time. Remember the steel copper?
Oh, that was fun. I think I still have those. I took that slide out.
See, this is the stuff that never leaves the shed. Like it goes in.
Yeah, this is a selfish idea for me, because this all started when I was just trying to gather materials, and then I had the extra stuff from whatever else I took apart.
They're used as electrical contractors in like rail cars, like electric car like trolleys, and I've never seen it, we had no idea it existed, but for whatever reason Davie tested this piece of copper. It's a bright, regular looking piece of copper, but it's magnetic because it needs the wear resistance. And so they have a running contactor for this like slide resistance for an overhead wire, but it looks just like copper, but it's magnetic.
And there was 2 pads on the thing. One of them was copper and one of them was this like steel impregnated copper or whatever. And they weren't that different looking. Like once I got it in the right light, I could see the difference.
The other is beryllium copper, but it's really rare. It's usually tools. Or tools are electrical contacts.
And brass is one that's always tricky to track down, because like the yellow brass is like the big category. Red brass is before a certain age, in like the 30s or something like that. And then hard brass, I think, is just a made up category. It only shows up sometimes. I'm not really sure. So some of the stuff like the aluminum, the 6061 is machining grade aluminum. So a lot of that stuff is things that I've taken in from my like machining kind of hobby stuff. And it's a higher rate. So when I say, hey, that's 6061, they'll go pull out their little laser gun to double check that it is that alloy. Where like the 6063 extrusions is pretty much just anything that's extruded meets that kind of recipe. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
mostly?
I think it does, and I'm just fascinated that you can sell this stuff while it's still, there's still a lot of work that has to be done to separate out the actual metal. I thought you guys would have to strip all the wiring to get all the insulation out, but apparently you don't.
Well, we don't, and that's where the grading comes in. And so like bare bright is where we strip all the insulation off. That's just the bare copper. The number 1 and number 2 is basically number 1 and number 2 insulated copper is basically the copper to everything else ratio. And then there's like the low grade insulated copper wire is like all your monitor cables that have like the big, injection molded ends with like the steel rings on them and stuff like that. It's just kind of real low grade stuff.
What the term breakage mean in all these?
Breakage is that metal mixed with other nonsense.
Essentially, if anything is mixed, they don't want to pay anything for it because they don't want to do the separation.
Yeah.
They'll magnetically separate, or they use conveyor, induction, the float separate. They do everything they can to separate it, but it all costs money.
Yeah.
So which breakage they pay will be whatever's most
Predominant,
prominent.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is usually a guy waving a magnet, and that's about it. So the guy's just kind of eyeballing it because at that point the breakage all is like they're basing it on steel, so they're really not paying much. But
Yeah.
Is there one outfit that's buying all of this together?
There's a handful in town. We use the one that we have a partnership with. Or an
There's
account
one
with.
outfit that will buy all of these now.
Most of them, the gold stuff, all is what we sent out. A lot of the IT equipment we take to a different place. All kind of bare metals go to an alternate metal recycling.
So how much do these guns cost?
The what? Oh, I have no idea.
XRF
The laser gun.
Yeah, so they use a thing called an XRF gun. It uses
Same thing that they have in like jewelry stores.
Could be, yeah. The problem is it's got a radioactive source in it, and the source decays over time. So every couple of years, you have to buy a new source. So you can go on eBay and buy an XRF gun for $1,000, and then to buy a source to make it work, you need another $9,000. Wow. And then you can buy a new one for $10,000. So like, you're basically buying a source, but you have to rebuy the source every X number of years. But it's able to precisely identify the alloy and then the mixture within. Unless it's coated. So if you like paint lead on the outside of something, it's going to show up as lead. But it can shoot through the density of other metals, depending on what the metal is.
What about like, gonna shoot through insulation?
Yeah, it'll go. Yeah, I mean, it's looking at just the metals, but it's unfortunately the guns are expensive. But whenever you've got enough that it's worthwhile, they own the gun and they don't care, so they'll bring it down from the office and identify stuff. But if you bring random stuff by to like, hey, can you tell me what this is? They don't want to look at it. Yeah,
And to give you an idea, I've been to the scrapyard this many times and I've seen that gun once.
yeah, it's not great.
So, yeah, they don't.
And so is this stuff, how do you know what stuff you can take that you're not taking? So for example, a bicycle with an aluminum frame,
Right.
can you take that?
They'll take literally anything. The yard doesn't care at all.
The yard doesn't care. If you took an aluminum framed bicycle, you would get aluminum braking. If you brought it here or whatever and took everything off of that aluminum frame, then you have actual aluminum. And then that would fit into one of these categories.
All right.
I know by a lot of trial and error. I've been doing this for 20 some years and I've gotten yelled at by a lot of scrapyard attendees. And I like meticulously sorted buckets and then they mumble and they resort. And I'm just like trying to take notes and figure out what the hell's going on the whole time. So yeah.
And how far down do you, so if you have a computer motherboard, how far down do you have to break that down before you know you're done breaking it down?
You have to take the 2032, the CMOS battery out of it.
Okay.
You have to pull the like stainless steel or whatever steel, the clips that hold the processor, the heat sinks and all that. I usually pull the aluminum off because that's worth a different rate. And then oftentimes, and this is kind of it changes with time and what the global market's doing and what the political climate looks like. I did a presentation a couple of years ago that actually directly correlated scrap prices with Trader Dipshit's tweets against China in his first term here in office. And so because other countries buy our scrap, there's a lot of variables at play. But anyway, so we now rip like the parallel ports and things like that with channel locks. We rip those off the motherboards as well to get the highest price.
So the website that we sent our gold boards to is called BoardSort. BoardSort is like an internet-friendly scrap person in Ohio. And so this guy runs a website that he buys through. So he'll buy materials. They also buy processors at functional prices per pound. If you've got modern prices, otherwise it's scrap prices. And then they do have this, oops, I lied. Back here. They do have a whole website dedicated to, it's a forum of information. So like how to scrap a motherboard. These guys want to make money by you doing the labor for them. So if you can send them stuff separated, they make more money, they give you more money, everybody's happier. So consequently, they will go through and teach you how to scrap things. They'll also teach you how to ship them stuff so you don't get screwed over. And then also how to do, whatever it is to make it more valuable for them and more valuable for you. So there's information online. The catches is like we shipped off 100 pounds of what we knew was good, but a lot of their categories are less than $1, and it's about $1 a pound to mail things. And so if you're going to drive to Ohio, you could send in all sorts of stuff. But if you're going to mail it to them, you're going to have to be above $1 a pound to make it worthwhile. And so again, these guys have all sorts of categories. The red is bad. Like, all right, if you got a lithium ion battery, they're going to charge you 50 cents a pound to get rid of it. If your lithium ions aren't destroyed, they're going to take it but not pay you anything. And they have various things for, if your stuff's ripped apart or otherwise. So anyway, this website publicly goes into a lot of the costs that they're willing to pay. And if you go to the scrapyard in town, they won't publish any of this stuff. We get every 3 days an email update because we have an account there. But if you go in and ask them what the scrap prices are, the cash price, if you just walked up and gave them an extension cord, they're going to pay you very differently than if you have an account with them, and very differently than if you provide them with 25,000 pounds of material. So they kind of have relationships, and if you don't have a relation with them, they don't care. And if you have a relation with them, we're tiny compared to anything. But they know that we do a good job separating stuff, and they also know that we're a charity, so I think that plays into them being willing to pay it and deal with us in a reasonable way. Any other last question? Oh, no, anybody else?
So now that you want to get into the chemical separation, but
No, we don't want to get into chemical separation. All right, the last question, thanks.
can you do a ballpark estimate of what's the value of a gold in like a little CPU? Has anybody ever said that? Like it's, it's 1/10 of a gram in plated stuff or wired?
Way high. I think the closest I can get you is the kind of price per gold here.
So to be clear, what they're doing with those, like, why did they pay us 50 cents for a half a gram, half an ounce of chips? Those go through a grinder and they grind off all the phenolic coating, the epoxy coating, and they're actually after the die wires. They don't care about the silicon inside of it. They don't care about the epoxy. They don't really care about the leg leads. They care about the die wires inside. And then they're also paying you for the contact surfaces or the doped surfaces inside some high power electronics. So they might be willing to pay more for MOSFETs and things like that, I think. But there are plenty of people on Reddit who have a literal blender and they will throw shit into the blender and they'll try to blend it and then they'll dissolve it in acid and then they'll end up with some amalgam of weird like goo in a jar. And then they'll post on the chemistry forum of like, I did this thing, I tried to follow this process, I now have green goo in a jar, it smells bad. What do I do to get it out of solution or into solution or plated or something?
How do I clean my waste blender?
I was thinking this on a similar lines that I'm gonna process my old gold and I went and talked to a chemist and he was like, oh, you need this, you need this, you need this. And then I stopped paying attention when he said weapons grade exhaust hood. I was like, okay, I don't have it.
Yeah, you don't want to.
What Bangladesh is for.
There are, as I say, there are good, interesting videos of the e-waste recyclers in other countries where they just have a fire and they're putting stuff on the fire and then shaking it off. And then they're sorting individual board components because they get paid based on the transformers or the processors of the chips. So. Wow. Aaron?
What's the best tweaker story you got from the scrap?
Oh, we're not going there.
I told you mine. It wasn't bad.
That was the best.
That was the best.
It's a very sad tale of somebody holding on to literally 2 cords that they found trying to get $1. Yeah, not good. All right. Thank you, Davie.
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about? All right, I will keep my remarks very brief. Sean, you ready for the demo? It's right behind you. You want to pass that thing around over there? So first things first, down in the car bay we have a fork truck, and it doesn't look like much. It just looks like a forklift. The fun thing with forklifts are, if you look on the VIN tag there, I gotta make sure I'm sharing my screen, which we are. On the VIN tag there, that is a great equipment tag, very hard to read, which they always are. That's 10,480 pounds. So our forklift that doesn't look like much weighs over 10,000 pounds. And our forklift the other day decided when I pushed the brakes that it didn't want to stop. And I pushed the brakes again, and then it really wanted to stop. And then I pushed the brakes again and it didn't want to stop. And then I pushed the brakes and they just drug. Fortunately, we never drive our forklift very fast, so it doesn't really matter. However, we had to fix the fork truck. And the fun thing about forklift brakes is that you have to pull the axle. So this is the axle for the drive for the truck to get the brakes off, which is also kind of how old cars were done, where it's a drum with the hub on the inside of it.
So that's when you fork truck down?
And so so we decided we were going to upgrade the fork truck, and so so the very first thing to do if you got to work on a forklift, hopefully some of you have seen this before, maybe you haven't. If you'd like to watch the full Klaus video, if you look up Klaus German forklift safety, you'll find it's meant to be humorous to keep people interested. The only relevant bit here is I was just gonna show you some pictures. It's just a big ass drum brake. They sell, what happened to ours, I guess is the relevant bit, is that the pad material fell off, which I've never seen before. But the shoe is this metal shoe part, or the drum part portion of the brake. And then there's a little pad on there, which I'm sure contains no asbestos, nothing bad. Davie's just going for it. Rub it on your face a little bit. But the shoe just fell off, and so what ended up happening was the 2 shoes were open. So if I hit the brakes when they were here, it would slow down. And if I hit the brakes when they were here, it wouldn't do anything. And then when I hit the brakes when they were like this, then it stopped really good. Fortunately, it didn't hurt the drums, didn't hurt anything else. But yeah, it was don't buy from Total Source, I think is the main summary there. But so we rebuilt the brakes. Of course, you probably shouldn't rebuild one side, you should rebuild both of them. But I took the other side apart, and of course, somebody rebuilt this side already once and didn't rebuild the other side. So now at least it's both been redone at the same time. We did figure out also that we can use 2 jacks to get this thing up. You can't quite see it, but this is sitting on timber. So it's not resting on a jack, it's not on a jack stand, it's just on wood blocks. There's another backup set of blocks to make sure we don't die. But this is what I was going to talk about. So this thing is this little fork truck. It's a thing made by Bambu. Bambu makes those printers that Bob was talking about that we have here. It's called Cyberbrick, and all it's going to do is just give a brief kind of what's entertaining about it. The first thing that's not going to appeal to this audience is that they have they flash the ESP32 with their own software, their own firmware, and you can't reflash it. So yeah, exactly. So if you choose to change the thing from their software, you can't change it. It is an ESP32. It's a little microcontroller. It's programmed over Bluetooth from your phone. You can also run it over USB-C. They've got a bunch of I/O pins that are defined, and then they break them out into motor ports, servo ports, and then LED ports. And then you've got this little controller. Where's the controller at? Thanks, Sean. You can pass it around. It's fine. We'll put chaos into the forklift. And then the fork truck's kind of fun, or the controller's kind of fun. You can switch between vehicles, so you can have it run multiple vehicles at the same time. You can make your own custom projects, but you've got to play in their environment. So they give you the bootloader, they give you the base code, and then you can mess with what it does. Or you can use their UI to affect changes based on which buttons you touch, that kind of thing. And of course, the appealing part, how do you get one of these things? They had them for $29 before the holiday. Now they're back up to $50. It's a set of parts. But if you make an account on Bambu on their thing, which is Maker World, you can post models. So quite a while ago, I posted some models on there. And every time somebody interacts with your model, so this was actually helping somebody here fix a part. So they had an April Air thing, the motor died. And so I drew a little coupler for them. And then anything that I draw, I generally post online so that hopefully it helps somebody else at some point. And in this case, every time anybody interacts with it, you get 20 points. So if you all are awesome, you'll go make a login and then go like upvote our shit. We'll get points. But for every 490 points, you get a $40 gift certificate. You can actually get one of these effectively for free, because if you complete all their stuff up here, you get a couple hundred points. And if you post some stuff, you get some points. But yeah, so you can get a gift certificate. They do pay out cash, of course, at a higher rate. You have to have a minimum number of points to get cash, depending on what you're doing. So that is your way to get free candy. They do have some other incentives. So if you have 100 points, you get a 99% off coupon. And they have a bunch of coupons to save money on what they've got. So there's a bunch of cool designs, crazy stuff people have posted. Of course, this is, Bambu Lab Robot, nothing to do with that one you may have seen on TV. This might be the next thing that I make. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Theo Jansen, Dutch guy, made the crazy Strand Beast walking machines. There is a tabletop that walks, which is pretty awesome. There's a crane, get the other bridge crane, they got all sorts of options. Anybody got any questions? Geez, Davie, it won't scrap for you. I'm sorry. It's not part of the system.
Don't care about this. How on earth did you find brake pads for the forklift?
Oh, that's a good question. First, I dug all over the pads trying to figure out if there's any markings at all. It's a little tiny token. So I dug all over the place trying to figure out it's on some other system. Could not find them anywhere. Online, they were $500 for a set of 4, because why would they be? But then I poked around on some other websites and found a lift truck supplier who had them for $20. So I was like, $20 sounds good. And then in the listing, it said inquire as to how many pads you get for $20. And normally brake pads are sold like in pairs at a minimum, oftentimes in 4s. This was sold truly individually. So they're $20 for each pad. Which is really weird. I've never seen that, but that's apparently how you buy lift truck pads. So $20 a piece. In case you want to only replace half of it.
I was expecting you to say 20 per half.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It was weird. Other questions about anything?
So are those still being made then?
Yeah, the truck actually isn't super old. And yeah, I think the axle that they use has got to be something. I didn't spend a ton of time looking, but I guarantee that's some Toyota truck axle or something. Because there's no way they're making a custom brake system for a forklift. Like, I want to poke around and figure out who the OEM supplier is, and it's not worth it. I'm pretty cheap, but I'm not that cheap. I thought about gluing them back on too. You know, I had the pad and I had the backer, so
Plenty of life.
epoxy some rivets. Could have been good. Any other questions? All right. Well, that's all we got for presentation. So we can go around. You can say who you are or what you're interested in or why you're here, or that you want to play on the forklift or whatever you want to do. And then, like I said, if you're interested in a tour, you can just meet kind of by the toolboxes. I'm happy to show people around. So without further ado, Bob, I hope you can do two things at once.
I'm Bob. I'm a newly certified forklift driver. No, I do